All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Autodesk Virtual Academy. My name is Alex Alvarez, application engineer and host for today's webinar. Joining me today is my good colleague, EP, Eric Paul. How's it going today?
It's going pretty good, Alex. Thanks.
Good. All right. So Eric Paul is actually a part of our automation team. So if you've done any sort of automation work, if you've reached out regarding any sort of automation projects, chances are you've more than likely talked to Eric Paul, or he's at least touched on some of the topics that you guys have been asking for. So again, for today, we are going to be talking about how to create Inventor buttons for your VBA macros. Again, this topic was given to us based off of the some of the surveys that get filled out at the end. So again, if this is your first time tuning into these virtual academies, welcome. Hope you guys pick up a thing or two from these interactive webinars. But at the end of the sessions, we do have these surveys. Again, obviously, they're going to be for us, making sure that we are actually generating topics that are relevant to you guys. So if there's something that you are not finding in our YouTube channel, maybe there's something that you're just wanting to see, but you don't see much information on, definitely fill out those surveys. We do take a look at those and we do analyze them at the end of each session. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about Inventor buttons for VBA macros. It's going to be a jam-packed session. We do have a little bit of additional information towards the end of the webinar as well in regards to what's new in some of the Autodesk products. Again, as many of you guys know, this is usually the time that Autodesk starts releasing their new versions of their software. So if that's something that you're interested in, stay tuned towards the end and we'll go ahead and make sure that we cover some additional information. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Eric and get today's session rolling.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So over the past few months, as part of getting some of that survey information, we saw a lot of people still interested in ways they can better use their macros. Now, one of the things that kind of came up early on with this is how can you best use those macros given the current system that Inventor has, right? So if there is, a lot of macros that you have, and maybe you only use a few that are, important, maybe you have a few that are really generic that you can use in lots of cases, it can be a real pain to get at them using the normal system. So what we did here is brought up something to make it a lot easier for you to see what's going on with these macros, get at them all the time. So I'll show you what I mean from that. I'll switch over to Inventor. Here we are, Inventor 2021. This won't last long. 2022 is coming very quick. Some of you might have already been getting those emails saying it's available. And I'm going to head over to a part environment and let's take a look at, kind of the default how you get at these macros, right? So if you're used to creating macros, you're probably familiar with the VBA editor, right? And here we have just a real basic example macro. This is more on usage, not on how to create macros. So just have a very basic message box that'll pop up for us. So usually the way you would use that is you need to go up to the macros tab, find where your macros live depending on, how many different project files you have. Maybe you have some macros that are built into your actual document. Otherwise, there's the application project that is, kind of a global access. And so here we can see that message macro. We'll go ahead and click run. You can see we just get a little message box. Hello there. All right. So that can be kind of a pain, especially, how many clicks you have to get through, and maybe you have tons in here you got to sort. So wouldn't it be so much easier to throw a little button on the ribbon? Yes, it would. So we're going to show you how. All right. So the first thing here that we're going to do, we're going to right click on the ribbon in a open space, and we're going to go down to this customize user commands button. And here we go. Now we've got a new window, and we're going to go to this drop down, the choose commands from, and we're going to select macros. And here we're going to get the list of all the macros that are in our default macros file. All right, and I'll show that again as soon as we get this in, just to clarify where it's pulling from. So I'm going to select the message macro, and I'm going to click add, and we can see there's a couple of different options here, and I'm going to click apply so we can see what the default is, and then I'm going to check these off and we can see what's going on. All right, so the default, it brings up a user commands panel under the, I happen to select tools as the bar to go under, right? So it could be, any of these that it goes under, but tools has a lot of space, so that's an easy one to go to. If I click on large, this is talking about the icon. So if I click apply, you can see the icon getting much larger. And then if I wanted to add text, it'll bring in the name of the macro here, okay? And so, that can be helpful, but with this default icon, that's maybe not the most helpful part of all of this. We're going to show you how we can add icons to that as well that are custom, something a little bit more relevant. And just one last thing here before I move to the icons, I'm going to take you back to, that module here, this application project. This is your default. This is where all my application-wide macros lives. Okay, and so anything under here is where it's going to pull up your options for, oh, come on, Inventor, macros here. Okay, so that list, this is how this list gets populated. Okay. So next thing we'll do here is we're going to have to find out where that default macros file lives, okay? So what we're going to go do is hit application options and go over to file. And here you're going to see tons and tons of default locations for everything. And the one we're looking for is down here. It's the default VBA project. So this one I've got highlighted here. So it's in a very difficult to get to place, right? So it's under public documents, Autodesk, the Inventor release, and macros. It might take a minute to get there, right? So luckily there's this little handy button, take you straight there. But since it uses the old Windows UI, it can be a little bit of a pain to actually get to it, right? But I will take us to an already prepped window. And here we can see what the actual location might be. We've got users, public, documents, Autodesk, Inventor 2021, and then macros. All right, so let me explain a little bit about what we're going to need to get this icon working. And I've got a slide with some of that information here. Let me take you back to it. So in order to get the icons working correctly and automatically, there's a naming convention that we need to follow, and there's a few important pieces as part of this. So the first thing is, it's going to have to follow this pattern of module name, subname, and this is also the macro name, and size. And this will be either small or large. If you remember, when we started putting this on the ribbon, we started with the small icon and then we moved to the large icon. and then the file type has to be BMP. Okay, so what does that mean here for module name? That's this one in red, right? So in our case, it's module 1. And the subname or macro name, that's message. And then the size, and this is very important, you have to have both a small and a large icon file here. And if you only have one of them, it's not going to show up. So even though you might only be using, say, the large icon on the ribbon, you still have to have a small version and a large version of this file for it to show up. And just a quick little note, the small version is a 16 by 16 image, and the large is a 32 by 32. So, you know, if we're going back to this later, hopefully you can just use this little slide here to help your naming convention. All right. So I'm going to take us back to our window here, right? So I happen to have these as PNGs. And this is pretty common, right? You have a lot of icons. Maybe you have your company icons or others. PNG tends to be, you know, a very, very common file type for icons. So I'm going to show you how we can convert this PNG document over to a BMP. And we're going to use Paint to do that. It actually makes this a really easy process. So I'm going to start with the large one. All right, so I'm going to right click this and I'm going to say open with Paint. And there it is. And I'm going to go up here to File, Save As. And if you hover over it, you can see that you can save this as a BMP. And so it'll automatically convert this for you when you do this. All right, so we're in the right location already. And what we're going to have to do is update this name to meet the naming conventions that are down at the bottom. All right. So what we're going to have to do is say module 1 dot message dot large, and that'll be the first one here. Go click save. And this icon happened to have transparency as part of it being a PNG. We're going to lose that as we convert it. That's okay in this case, just a note that that'll happen. So now we have our first one, module 1 and message large. And I'm actually going to close Inventor so that we can have that loaded up after we get these icons. Go back to our things here. And then we're going to do this again for the small. All right, so we're going to open with Paint. And there's a small version. Again, the save as BMP picture. And instead of large, we're going to call this one small. All right. Yeah, we're going to lose transparency. That's okay. Okay, so now I have the two files that I needed. All right, module 1.message.large and small. So now that these are in place, when you restart Inventor, which I started by closing here, you know, as soon as this comes up, we'll go to our environment and test that out. While this is loading up, looks like we've got a couple of questions that came through on the chat. The first one here, does the path matter if using Vault? So I'm going to interpret the question a little bit here, and you know, if I've got it wrong, let me know. But what I'm thinking is that perhaps you have your default VBA project set to a local folder that is part of Vault. That's no problem. Just make sure you're putting these icons you know, whoever's managing your vault, or if you have access to this path, put those icons in vault, and then do a get on that whole folder so that they also live on your local machine. Once you do that, then you'll be able to access this all the same.
So it's just point that to the local workspace vault folder, right, Eric?
And I believe you would have to do that anyways in order to, you know, get that connection to Vault. So yes.
Got it.
All right. Let me open up this part here. Give us back our environment. And when we go over to tools, hey, we've got the cool large icon there. And again, if we wanted to change that, maybe use the small, we can go back to here, uncheck large if we wanted. You know, there's the small version in use. Another way you'll see that icon and why you always need the small. If I click this here, click OK, when you do a right click action, there is basically a last used command. And so here it is showing up and using that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so actually while we're here on this topic, Eric, I did want to go over one of the, I want to say question, but I think it's more of a comment. If we'll be going over how to add this to a new ribbon. So I think, and again, I'm kind of interpreting the question here from Kevin. Kevin, are you asking if we're going to be adding this to a new tab? So having like a user commands tab instead of just inside of a panel. Okay, yeah, so I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Eric, but out of the box, I don't think there's a way for us to add a new tab to Inventor. Would this have to be something that we do through the API, or is this something as easy as just, I'm not sure if we need to take this one offline or not.
I'll do some double checking, but I believe you would have to do it through API. So either perhaps a macro that started everything off and loaded it, or
Right.
more reasonably, perhaps a Inventor add-in that created that ribbon. But then at that point, you might just use an add-in for everything anyways.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too, because I think Philip, so someone else on our team actually did do, I think 1 or 2 webinars on how to do that add-in. If that's something that you're interested in, we'll go ahead and just contact you afterwards, Kevin, just to point you in the right direction. But yeah, we'll do a little bit more digging around, see if that's something that we can add to a completely new tab, or if it's, you know, something that's built out of the box for Inventor.
Yep. I see another question came in here. Let me read it off here. So I think this is very common. So I definitely want to make sure this gets addressed here. So the question is, let's say I currently have iLogic rules saved to the vault and global forms saved to the vault. That gives my whole team access to iLogic rules. What am I missing out on by having that configuration versus macros that can be added to the ribbon? Is there a tutorial to convert these from iLogic to VBA macros? So that's a really common setup that you have with the iLogic on Vault, right? And having global forms there in Vault. That can stay that way. You're not missing out on anything by having it in that style. You know, a lot of the work that people will do for automation and small little, you know, helper routines, as we've gone to the more new releases of Inventor, tend to be in iLogic, just because it's a little bit easier environment to share everything and create. You know, there's a lot of helper code in there that makes it easier for people. So there's really no need to go back to VBA macros. VBA macros tend to be a legacy setup in here, and there's really no need to go back to it. So if you've got that iLogic set up and form set up in Vault, that's great. That's a fantastic way to set it up. And you don't need to do anything to get here. All your rules should be easily accessible down here on the iLogic tab, for instance. Maybe your global forms as well, right? So that's hopefully similarly accessible as you might have needed to do for macros to put buttons, right? Just down here, and it's always available. Hopefully that answers your question on that one. If you have any follow-ups on that, let me know. But basically, stick with your iLogic. It's great. All right, let's see. Any other questions come in?
No, I think that's it. That's it for now.
All right. So I'm going to switch to our upcoming events for the next AVAs here.
Awesome. Yeah. And so yeah, in the meantime, we'll go ahead and just wait for a little bit more questions. Yeah. So this was a pretty straightforward, I wouldn't say presentation, webinar kind of walkthrough. So if you guys have any questions, something that you didn't quite understand, just let us know in the chat. Or if you want to follow up, I'm going to be doing some of the follow up afterwards. But yeah, what we're showing here on screen right now, like I mentioned before the webinar, we are going to be going over through some additional information on the what's new for some of the Autodesk software, right? So we are going to have some of the actual Autodesk employees, some of our friends over there at Autodesk do some of these presentations. So this is a great chance for you guys to really get to meet, the people behind some of these softwares. If you guys have any questions, maybe there's something that you guys want to ask. Maybe there's a feature that you want to see incorporated. Not 100% sure that they're going to answer it online or not, but it's worth a shot, right? So we are going to have Autodesk actually do these presentations. Go ahead and sign up if you're not signed up for these just yet. Like I said, tons of new stuff, tons of new cool features kind of incorporated into these softwares. If you guys are Fusion 360 users, we also have someone from Autodesk do a presentation for what's new in Fusion. So again, a lot of great webinars coming up here in the upcoming weeks. So something you don't want to miss, something that you can definitely go ahead and sign up for.
I got to say, Alex, I'm really excited for the Inventor 2022 presentation. I don't want to spoil all of the cool things, but there's going to be some drastic changes to the way our automation works and reuse of models. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, no, really excited for that. So that's a great little teaser there, Eric. So yeah, anything else you would like to add before we jump into any additional questions, Eric?
No, I think that's it. Looks like we got one last question here. What advantages do add-ins have over, say, VBA or iLogic setup? That's a great question. So if you kind of think of the different options here as kind of a scale of ease of use to and complexity, VBA and iLogic, these are both set up within the Inventor environment. And, you create your scripting in that environment, with iLogic being the, evolution of the early VBA macros. What add-ins let you do is program outside of Inventor, right? So you'd use something like Visual Studio or whatever other, that's pretty much it right now. And you can, at that point, just really use the Inventor API to make Inventor do exactly what you want to do. Or maybe you want it to integrate with other programs. Some of the things I've done involve using both Inventor and AutoCAD to get things happening the way you want. Another advantage to add-ins is, you could actually create a completely separate program that uses the Inventor API kind of in the background, right? So it gives you a lot more flexibility over what you can do. It's much, much more complex, but it's also way more powerful. So that's why people tend to use add-ins over iLogic or VBA, is that, you know, they have a very complex need, and it's something that's, you know, takes a lot of time to develop. They'll usually do that outside and do it through an add-in.
Awesome. And you can also maybe mix and match a little bit, right, Eric?
Oh,
Or would you
absolutely.
recommend that?
We commonly do a mix and match of iLogic and Inventor add-in. You know, sometimes we have parts and assemblies that have a bit of iLogic that are kind of template parts and assemblies, right?
Right.
Template models. And we'll use the add-in to push some properties, run a couple of rules, things that make more sense for users changing some stuff downstream, right? So maybe the add-in configures partway and then iLogic takes over the rest.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of complex interactions you can do there.
Yeah, and so that's also one thing that I also want to note is that, you know, if you guys are currently doing iLogic right now, that's great. Don't stop. Once you find a limitation, or maybe you find kind of an obstacle that you guys can't really quite get with iLogic, maybe that's where you need to start considering some of the add-ins. And of course, if you guys need any guidance on that, any help, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. We have really an extensive knowledge, pretty big team that manages some of the automation here at KETIV. So we can always provide some guidance on what you're trying to do. And it looks like we have another question here. How do you use a master assembly iLogic rule managed more than once? Eric, I'm not sure if that's something that you understand or something that we might need an example of.
Yeah, I might need a little bit more clarification on that one. I'm not really sure what the question means. So if you
Okay.
could send that through again.
Yeah, send out an email to us, and we'll see if we can clarify some of the issues that you're having with that.
And just a quick add-on to your last thing, Alex, of you know, when you might be hitting limitations on iLogic and start looking at perhaps add-ins as the answer to solving those things. You know, we do have a few AVA topics here where we cover how to get started with those Inventor add-ins. So, you know, even if you're just kind of curious of what it might take, you can take a look at those. Those were from a
Absolutely.
couple months back.
Yep. Yeah, so fairly recent webinars. Okay, so we'll give it a few more seconds here for any more questions. Let me just double check.
Oh, I see another one came through. Does the button have to be on the Tools tab, or can it be on any other tabs? It can absolutely be on whatever tab that you would like. Let me go and switch that over. So right now, I have this set on the Tools tab, but let me take this back and put it on, say, the Manage tab. You know, I move that over. I'm going to click OK, and I go over to Manage, and now here it is on the Manage tab. And if you have multiple, you know, they don't all have to be on the same tab. So you could have one macro here, you could have one macro here. You know, it's wherever is most handy for you guys.
Awesome.
All right. See another one coming in. I don't have any experience with iLogic, but have an extensive experience with VBA from working with Excel. Might you folks be doing one of these for iLogic? So that's a really common thing. People's knowledge of VBA from working with Excel, right? Because getting a little scripting in there really, you know, is a launching pad for this type of stuff. Can you give me a little bit more on what you might want to see with the iLogic? We do have some others that are really getting started with iLogic, as well as some of the options for having global iLogic forms and global external rules, so they can kind of work similarly to what we saw here. Just instead of having those buttons live up in the ribbon, they live in the iLogic tab here. Okay. So a clarification on, what can I do with iLogic? Yes, we have an extensive library of topics on iLogic. Probably the easiest way to get at that is through our YouTube page. We record all these sessions, and we actually have a playlist of iLogic specific videos with quite a bit of content there. And if you see anything that you're interested in or want to know more about that you don't see there, let us know, and we'll probably just do a video on it.
Yeah, sure thing. And while I'm looking, so I'm looking up how to, let's see if this adds any clarification. But yeah, this might even be a topic for us in the future. But how to create your own custom ribbon item. I'm going to go and share this tab or this link with everyone. This is actually a great blog that you can get tons of information on. So there's information here on pretty much everything. So that's something that you guys are also getting up and running with automation or maybe coding. This is a pretty good starting point. But yeah, this might be a good starting point for people who want to get a new ribbon item. If not, like I said, we'll do a little bit more digging on our end, see if there's an easier way to kind of go about this. But if you do want to create a custom tab with some of these macro buttons, this looks like this can possibly be one of the avenues that we can explore.
Very cool, Alex.
Okay, so let's see. iLogic language is a simplified version of VB code, but there are several great productivity enhancements in iLogic that you can use without having to write any code. Yep, Michael, that's exactly right. Yeah, it makes it extremely easy. I mean, for me, someone that my background is really mechanical engineering, so I don't have any programming background. But again, iLogic, just understanding how to read some of it, some of the snippets that Autodesk has for iLogic, that it just makes it extremely easy for going about creating some of the custom programming there.
Yeah, and if you haven't taken a look at iLogic, since in the last, say, year, there's been quite a few significant advancements in the snippets available in Inventor 2021 and now 2022. So if it's been a minute since you've taken a look and thought, well, this doesn't have enough of the stuff I'm looking for, take another look. There's a lot of really cool new helpful snippets to make your life easier.
Okay. All right. So I think that's going to be it on the questions. With that, I want to thank you, Eric, for having a great presentation, and thank you guys for joining us as well. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.